I'm with Gidon Ariel, and now at the moment, Israel and the Palestinians are sitting down in talks together. As an Orthodox Jew, do you see the potential for success in these talks?
First of all, the fact that I'm an Orthodox Jew isn't really the point here. I'm a proud nationalistic Israeli who a lot of my nationalism does stem from my faith, but doesn't necessarily overlap. Again, the answer to your question isn't necessarily because of my faith, but because more of my knowledge of previous history. And that is, unfortunately, for the past decades upon decades, we've been trying to sit down with Palestinians, and tragically, not peace has come out of this, but more and more war, more and more terror attacks. So, on the one hand, I think that there is not going to be any kind of summarization of these talks. I believe it was Abba Ibn, or perhaps Golda Meir, who said the Arabs never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. Meaning that as much as Israel is striving for peace, and we want peace more than anything else, we are not pushovers, and we're not going to say we agree to peace when actually what we're getting is more and more war and more terror. We live in a very difficult neighborhood over here in the Middle East, which is why so many Israelis are so strongly looking for a peaceful solution to the Israel-Arab conflict. Unfortunately, if you go in trying to find a solution that isn't really strong, then you're just going to end up even worse. So
I guess you can see that with Gaza when they gave Gaza away and ended up worse with rockets fired.
You said it, I didn't, but it's really true. And the tragedy is that the worst terror that is happening to people is the terror happening to the Muslim Gazans themselves by the Hamas terrorists who are lording over them with an iron hand. So if somehow there could be a strong enough Muslim, Palestinian, Arab leadership who truly wanted to peace, who truly can see the future that Israel sees with its hand outstretched to its Muslim neighbors, then we would have peace in an instant. But to quote another famous truism, and that is that if the Arabs would put down their arms, in a moment there would be peace. But if the Jews would put down their arms, in a moment there would be no more Israel. And that is why we are standing guard, and that is why we're so careful and so worried about what might happen in these secretive so-called peace talks.
Now, one of the deals made for talks is the release of some Palestinian prisoners, and even today some prisoners will be released. One prisoner shot and killed a soldier, and other prisoners have murdered Jews. How did the Israeli public feel about murderers being released?
There is no one in Israel today who is happy about this. It is a terrible albatross that we are carrying upon us, that we have to worry about such a thing. Imagine, I'm talking to your listeners now. Imagine if your daughter or son or parent were butchered, murdered. They were out on a picnic, a young couple, just one that I'm thinking of now, near a Christian monastery in Jerusalem, and an Arab terrorist comes upon them with a hatchet and hatches them to pieces. And now, as a goodwill measure, Israel has agreed to release that hatchet murderer. What's good about that? How can anybody feel good about this? It's a terrible tragedy, something that people on the right cannot really understand. And frankly, I don't see how any type of negotiating partner could ever want something like this. It only can be that they're teaching and are being taught that these terrorists are not terrorists, but some sort of freedom fighter who in in an act of self-defense, was able to push off these horrific, monstrous Israelis. That must be what they're teaching them, because two students from Hebrew University who just went to a hillside to have a picnic is what we know the truth to be. So somebody's not telling somebody else the truth over here, unfortunately, which is why we're still holding on to the terror and the war that's happening in the Middle East. But of course, Israel, as much as it's got a very strong, high place in the newspaper and in the media, it is just a speckle in the entire world where tremendous conflicts are happening. I encourage your listeners, Paul, to look up current conflicts in the world, and they have it broken down into two parts. Conflicts where there are more than 1,000 people killed annually, and conflicts where there are less than 1,000 people killed annually. There's about 24 conflicts around the world where more than 1,000 people are killed annually in those conflicts. And also about 24 under 1,000 that are listed over there. Only one of them is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, where only a few dozen people at most are killed annually. So to call, and of course we shed a tear for every person killed, and especially if they're part of us. But please focus your headlights and your spotlights elsewhere if you really care about humanity.
Now, obviously, when there are negotiations for peace, there has to be concessions on both sides. Do you feel that Israel gives up too much?
I don't see why there has to be concessions on both sides. I don't think that we have to concede something in order to live in peace. I don't think that the Palestinians have to concede anything in order to live in peace and prosperity either.
Do you feel that the Palestinians are true brokers for peace?
You don't mean the Palestinians? They're not brokers for peace. They are supposedly our peace partners. There are other brokers, for example, the Americans. They're trying to broker a peace part over here. As far as the Americans are concerned, I don't know what's going on with over there. I haven't been following American policy too much lately, but I do know that Americans have their own problems, be it with Obamacare or the economy or other places around the world that they're dealing with. And right now, they've got some problems with Germany as well. But as far as the Palestinians are concerned, I have Palestinian Arabs whom I count as friends as well. And I think that on a grassroots level, I do believe it is possible to achieve peace. Unfortunately, a tremendously tragic policy mistake was taken about 20 years ago when the arch-terrorist Yasser Arafat was allowed to come into the Palestinian territories, brought with him his hooligans, and basically took over Israel, took over the Palestinians, and now we have to deal with true terrorists, where before we were dealing with people who we might have been able to come to a conclusion for. Today, I don't know how that's going to happen.
Do you think there can be real peace when, particularly the Palestinian youth, children in their schools, they're being taught terror, and the best way to actually influence somebody is get to the children?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So you see, the children and the media. I remember once I was on Army Reserve duty, and we had a TV on our base, and it was tuned to a Palestinian station, and we just kept on seeing a music video showing how terrible the Israelis are and how they are killing everybody right and left and biting people's heads off. This is tremendously false propaganda. And obviously you can't blame them if that's what they think, but you have to blame the people who are feeding them this. I'd also like to point out to our listeners, Paul, an organization called Palestinian Media Watch. This is an organization, you can Google it, Palestinian Media Watch, PMW, which monitors Palestinian media, children's shows, news shows, sports programs, crossword puzzles, and just the infiltration of the anti-Israel propaganda that's going on over there is just horrific to comprehend.
Do you think that one day there will be a Palestinian state?
if there will be a Palestinian state, it will not be within the confines of the borders of Israel as it stands today since the 1967 war. I think that the fact I personally live not far from Hebron, in the southern half of the West Bank. I live in a beautiful community that is thriving and has been for the past 30 years. We have building going on in our community with Arabs who live in Hebron come in daily to work. On a personal level, we live fine. But to suggest that Hebron, which is the hotbed of Hamas activity, would be a place where the Hamas can govern, and all that would be just a launching pad for rockets and terror attacks against me and my family in our community, or here in Jerusalem or in Tel Aviv, you would have to be a fool to be looking forward to something like that. I'm looking forward to an opportunity to live and let live, but not, as this video as I see nearby here, not to live and let die.
Now, is the Israel-Palestinian debate really a spiritual battle?
Well, that's a very interesting question. If the Israeli-Palestinian debate is actually a spiritual battle, then I think that the people who are there debating, they are on the same side of the spiritual battle. I think that the spirit of God, as it is taught in the Bible, is that this land belongs to the Jewish people, and from this land will go forth the word of God and the Spirit of the Lord throughout all the nations. And that will be a message of peace and of faith. And you and I and your listeners, Paul, who believe in the Bible, can certainly agree that we are looking forward to the day that there will be peace on earth and goodwill towards all men. This is a phrase that I've heard from the Christmas programs when I grew up in the United States, but it's something that I'm willing to sign on. And I really believe that it is a value that has come from the Jewish tradition all the way from God on Mount Sinai when he revealed himself to the Jewish people and to the world around. So I think that what we're talking about here is truly a hope and prayer that God's will of having, like I said, peace on earth and goodwill towards men, and the Jewish people living in the land of Israel as they were promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I believe that that is a day that is coming soon, and that is what I think we really have to strive for and to pray for.
And what's your prayer for the Palestinians, finally?
As I was saying earlier today, I pray that Arabs living in this part of the land called the Palestinians will recognize that they don't have to hate in order to love. They don't have to look at someone else and say, he's got it better than me and I've got it so bad. No, please join us. Please try to make this world better. Don't notice that on every wanted sign in every post office in the United States, it's full of people with Arab and Muslim names because they are wanted for murder and for terror. And then if you look at the list of Nobel Prize winners, it's full of people with Israeli and Jewish names. Don't feel so bad about that. Come and join us. Our universities are open. Our land is open for peace. We're looking forward to more and more tourism. And we do hope that together we can be a shining light in this world for peace and goodwill.
Okay, Gidon, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Great.